Across the world, from the windswept plateaus of Armenia to the sun-baked valleys of Peru, from the sacred islands of Malta to the shores of Kyrgyzstan, human beings have left behind monuments that continue to baffle and inspire. These stones, carved, arranged, and revered over millennia, hint at knowledge, belief, and artistry that we are only beginning to grasp. Some align with the stars, others mark the resting places of the dead, and a few may even carry messages from civilizations lost to time. In this journey, we will explore 10 of the most extraordinary megalithic sites on the planet, places where stone becomes storytelling, ritual, and mystery. Together, we will walk among ancient giants, peer into enigmatic carvings, and consider the minds and cultures that dared to shape the earth itself. Prepare to see the past not just as history, but as a living landscape of wonder, imagination, and unanswered questions. The Marcahuasi Plateau in Peru is scattered with enormous stone formations that, to many observers, appear to resemble human faces, animals, and architectural shapes. Spread across several square kilometers, these forms are so numerous that it is difficult to traverse the plateau without noticing what looks like a profile, a head, or a figure staring out of the rock. Marcahuasi gained wider recognition in the 20th century when travelers and researchers began documenting its unusual landscape. Local communities had long regarded it as a sacred site, but it was researcher Daniel Russo, in the 1950s, who brought it international attention. Russo argued that these shapes were not merely the result of natural erosion, but the remnants of ancient sculptures created by a long-lost civilization. To him, the plateau was an immense outdoor gallery, its figures depicting humans, deities, and animals from a time so remote that no direct record remained. His writings spread globally, attracting archaeologists, mystics, adventurers, and tourists. The formations themselves are striking, some rising as tall outcrops, others stretched horizontally across the ground. Yet again and again, they seem to form recognizable silhouettes. Visitors often point to what has been named the Monument to Humanity, a rock formation that resembles a human head in profile. Others claim to see lions, camels, or sphinx-like beings carved into stone. The sheer abundance of such likenesses has fueled decades of debate. Are these shapes proof of ancient sculptural work, or does the human mind simply pattern-match natural features into familiar forms? Most geologists support the latter view. The plateau consists largely of volcanic rock weathered over countless millennia by wind, rain, and temperature shifts. Natural erosion can produce remarkably figurative shapes, and the phenomenon of pareidolia, the tendency to perceive faces or figures in random patterns, is well established. From this perspective, the Marcahuasi forms are spectacular but accidental, shaped by nature and interpreted by imagination. However, proponents of human craftsmanship argue that some formations possess angles and proportions too precise to be coincidental. They suggest that ancient people may have enhanced natural outcrops with intentional carving, gradually shaping recognizable figures over generations. If true, the obvious questions arise. Who shaped them, when was it done, and for what purpose? No confirmed archaeological link ties Marcahuasi to a known culture, although pre-Inca civilizations inhabited nearby valleys. Without artifacts, datable materials, or architectural remains, the sculpted landscape theory remains speculative, yet the allure of a forgotten civilization endures. Local traditions add yet another dimension. Nearby communities have long considered the plateau a sacred place associated with healing, visions, and spiritual encounters. Shamans historically conducted rituals there, and modern visitors often report vivid dreams, strange sensations, or feelings of presence after spending nights among the rocks. High altitude, isolation, and psychological expectation may contribute to such experiences, but the legends continue to reinforce the plateau's mystical aura. In this atmosphere, alternative theories thrive. Some fringe researchers believe the formations encode messages left by a prehistoric global culture. Others propose astronomical alignment, suggesting that the figures mirror constellations or track celestial cycles. A few even link the site to extraterrestrial contact, claiming the scale of the figures and supposed global parallels as evidence. While firmly outside mainstream research, such ideas have ensured Markawasi remains a magnet for mystery tourism. One of the difficulties in resolving the debate is the lack of excavation and material culture. Unlike structured archaeological sites such as Tiwanaku or Gunung Padang, Markawasi presents no clear walls, foundations, or artifacts to analyze. Its mystery exists entirely in the shapes of its stones. Without cultural context, arguments rely on interpretation alone, leaving the field open to both skepticism and belief. When standing on the plateau, the landscape itself heightens the effect. The high altitude produces thin air and wide horizons. Vegetation is sparse, and the sky seems immense. The stone figures, real or imagined, stand in stark relief as shifting light casts deep shadows across their surfaces. In such an environment, it is easy to feel watched, easy to perceive faces and forms where stone has fractured naturally. Whether shaped by nature or hand, the emotional impact is undeniable, creating the sense of entering a landscape filled with presence. Proposed methods for carving range from simple to extraordinary. If ancient people enhanced these rocks, they might have used basic stone tools to emphasize natural shapes, much like petroglyph traditions found throughout the Andes. Determining when this could have occurred is more difficult. Some enthusiasts claim immense antiquity, tens of thousands of years, while skeptics maintain that no evidence supports human activity that early. The question of who carved them remains open. Peru is home to cultures with remarkable stoneworking traditions, from Chavín to the Inca, but no direct connection to Markawasi has been established. In the end, Markawasi occupies a unique space among ancient mysteries. It is not a pyramid, temple, or stone-cut platform, but a high plateau where nature and perception blur into one another. That ambiguity is its power. Visitors may wander for hours seeing faces and animals everywhere, or dismissing them as coincidence. Scholars can argue geology versus sculpture, but the rocks endure, silent and unmoved, for 1,000 meters above sea level. And so the central question lingers. Are these stones evidence of forgotten artistry, or is the human brain simply seeking patterns in random forms? Until clear archaeological proof emerges, Markawasi remains both a geological wonder and a sacred landscape, a place where science and legend coexist in a precarious balance, inviting interpretation, imagination, and endless wonder. Near the small Bolivian town of Samaipata rises a sandstone hill, roughly 220 meters in length, its entire upper surface carved and reshaped by human hands. Unlike a temple assembled from blocks or a fortress built stone by stone, this is a single, continuous mass of living rock, sculpted directly into terraces, channels, niches, and geometric forms that spread across its summit like an open-air blueprint. Standing atop, it does not feel like being inside a structure. Instead, the impression is that the hill itself has been transformed into a monumental ceremonial platform. Archaeologists refer to it as El Fuerte de Samaipata, the Fort of Samaipata, though the name is misleading. 17th-century Spanish chroniclers believed the carvings belonged to a military stronghold, yet its shape and features suggest a function far removed from warfare. Long before Europeans arrived, the site was a center of ritual significance for several cultures. Pre-Inca groups in the eastern Andes appear to have begun carving the hill, and later, in the 15th century, the Inca incorporated it into their expanding empire, adapting the sacred rock into their own ceremonial framework. The surface is astonishing to behold. Deep channels cross the stone like waterways. Stairways descend from platform to platform. Carved niches line the rock walls, while rectangular basins and geometric grids cover broad sections of the summit. At one end sits a sculpted seat, often described as a throne, overlooking the sweeping landscape of valleys and distant mountains. Elsewhere, long straight lines etched into the bedrock align toward the horizon, raising the possibility that they were connected to astronomical observation or calendrical tracking. The scale alone raises questions. Why modify an entire hill when constructing temples or shrines of masonry would have required less effort? The labor needed to smooth the sandstone, to cut deep channels and expansive terraces, must have been immense, far beyond what was necessary for ordinary ritual architecture. Such ambition suggests a purpose of high ceremonial or cosmological importance. Many archaeologists interpret Samaipata as a ceremonial center where rulers, priests, and communities gathered for rites tied to agriculture, fertility, or the movements of the sun and stars. Others propose that it functioned partly as an observatory, a vast, open-air instrument carved from the landscape itself. One feature frequently discussed is the network of channels carved into the stone. Some researchers believe these were designed to direct the flow of rainwater, perhaps guiding it across the summit in controlled paths. In Andean cosmology, water was sacred, a gift of the gods, essential for life in regions where rainfall was unpredictable and agriculture relied on careful management of moisture. By channeling water through the rock, the hill may have been transformed into a symbolic model of the natural world, a microcosm where earth, sky, and flowing water formed part of ritual performance. When the Inca absorbed the region in the late 15th century, they incorporated Samaipata into their state religion. The empire was known for adopting local sacred sites, recognizing their spiritual power and reclassifying them as huacas under imperial authority. Samaipata was not erased, but reinterpreted, folded into a new ceremonial network. After the Spanish conquest, yet another layer was added. Conquistadors misidentified the site as a fortress and established a small colonial settlement nearby, leaving traces of European presence atop a landscape steeped in indigenous tradition. These overlapping cultural horizons make it difficult to assign the carvings to a single era, as remnants of pre-Inca, Inca, and Spanish use coexist across the hill. Despite centuries of debate, the true purpose of Samaipata remains unresolved. The fortress interpretation persists in the name, but lacks architectural support. There are no defensive walls, no battlements, and the wide, terraced surfaces would have been poor for warfare. The ceremonial and astronomical theories are more consistent with Andean practice, especially the cultural emphasis on mountains as sacred beings and on integrating natural formations into spiritual life. Even so, the monument scale sets it apart from ordinary shrines. Samaipata is not merely decorated rock, it is rock transformed, a mountain reshaped into sacred geometry. Standing on the summit today is a profound experience. Imagine standing on a single carved stone the length of 2 football fields, its surface stepped into terraces, its grooves and lines stretching beneath your feet like messages in a forgotten code. The wind sweeps across the plateau, and from the edges the landscape unfolds toward the Amazon lowlands in one direction and the high Andes in the other. It feels less like architecture and more like a stage, built for ceremonies involving both humans and gods. Excavations around the hill reveal foundations of dwellings and masonry structures, suggesting that the carved rock formed the center of a larger ceremonial complex, where ritual, governance, and cosmology intersected. Spanish colonial records mention indigenous ceremonies continuing at Samaipata long after conquest, though filtered through missionary eyes intent on suppressing native beliefs. What remains unanswered is the question that shadows every carved surface. What knowledge justified such monumental labor? Smaller temples would have sufficed for ordinary worship. To carve an entire hill required generations of organization, skill, and devotion. Was Samaipata an observatory aligned with the movement of the heavens? A ritual hydrological model reflecting water as sacred essence? or a ceremonial heartland binding multiple cultures across centuries. Even without definitive answers, the Rock of Samapata stands as an unparalleled example of megalithic ambition. It is not a structure made of stone, it is stone itself, reworked into human vision while remaining inseparable from the mountain. Like many of the world's great enigmas, its mystery endures not because evidence is abundant, but because so much has been lost. Why carve a mountain when smaller temples would do? What meaning once flowed through those channels and terraces? And what drove ancient builders to transform an entire hill into a platform that still defies easy explanation? High in the vast Altiplano of Bolivia, nearly 4,000 meters above sea level, stands the ancient ceremonial city of Tiwanaku, a culture that thrived long before the rise of the Inca Empire. At its heart lies the Acapana Pyramid, an enormous stepped platform over 200 meters across, rising in tiered levels once faced with heavy stone blocks. In its time, this monument ranked among the most imposing ritual structures in the ancient Andes. Unlike isolated sites such as Amaru Muru or the sculpted red sandstone of Samapata, Acapana is part of an extensive ceremonial core, evidence of a sophisticated and highly organized society. Although its stepped form loosely recalls the pyramids of Mesoamerica, its construction and architectural expression remain distinct to the Tiwanaku culture. Seen from above, its base forms a cross-shaped outline, and its terraces ascend through 7 levels to a height of roughly 17 meters. Each terrace was originally sheathed in large stone slabs, many weighing several tons and fitted with precision. At the summit lay a sunken courtyard, enclosed by walls of finely cut andesite, giving the impression of a hollowed platform open to the heavens, a ceremonial chamber where sky and stone met. One of Acapana's most remarkable features is its hydraulic drainage system. Stone channels and conduits run through the structure, engineered to guide rainwater from its summit downward and outward onto the surrounding plains. This was far from mere practicality, it was symbolic. In Andean cosmology, mountains were life-givers, sources of waters inhabited by powerful spirits. By crafting a man-made mountain that controlled water, the Tiwanaku may have been shaping a physical model of the universe, uniting sky, earth, and underworld through architecture. Many archaeologists consider Acapana a ritual center linked to agriculture, fertility, and astronomical ceremonies. Aligned to the cardinal directions and dominating the landscape of the Altiplano, the pyramid likely marked solstices and seasonal transitions essential to farming in such a harsh environment. Its monumental scale, even in ruin, suggests a political and spiritual proclamation, a declaration of Tiwanaku power, faith, and cosmic authority. Yet mysteries endure. One of the greatest involves the origins and transport of its megalithic stones. Some andesite blocks were sourced from quarries more than 40 kilometers away, across Lake Titicaca, while enormous sandstone pieces came from even farther. Without wheels or draft animals, moving such stones would have demanded immense communal labor, engineering skill, and organization. Experiments show that hundreds of people using ropes, rollers, or sledges could transport multi-ton stones, but ferrying them across rugged terrain and water remains a daunting puzzle. Another ongoing question is whether Acapana was ever fully finished. Today, it appears as a weathered mound, terraces eroded, summit damaged, surfaces stripped. Spanish chroniclers of the 16th century described it already partially dismantled, with locals repurposing stone for later construction. Yet some scholars argue it may have never reached completion, noting unfinished sections and abrupt construction transitions. If work ceased, was the cause environmental collapse? Political conflict? Resource limitations at altitude? The possibility of incompletion folds into the larger enigma of Tiwanaku itself. Between 500 and 1000 CE, this city became the heart of a culture influencing vast stretches of the Andean world, yet it produced no written language. Its decline remains uncertain, prolonged drought and climate change are strong explanations. With no texts, the meaning of Akapana must be inferred through architecture, iconography, and comparison. Some interpret it as a sacred mountain temple built to channel rain, others as an artificial water shrine symbolizing the cycle of life. Whatever its true purpose, engineering and cosmology here were inseparable. To modern visitors, Akapana can appear as a giant earthen platform softened by centuries. But reconstructions reveal a once awe-striking monument. Terraces gleaming with stone, water flowing through carved channels, priests conducting ceremonies atop the sunken court beneath the open sky. From its summit, the high plateau stretches endlessly, making clear how this structure commanded the landscape like a crafted peak reflecting both earth and heavens. The mystery of Akapana lies not only in its scale, but in what it whispers about the Tiwanaku people. They mobilized massive labor forces, hauled megaliths across distance and water, and built architecture encoded with sacred meaning. Yet their voices are silent, only stones remain, bearing witness to ambition, ingenuity, and belief. So the questions continue. Was Akapana a completed monument whose splendor eroded with time? Or an unfinished masterpiece halted as its builders faded? Was it primarily a ceremonial pyramid, an astronomical observatory, a water mountain, or all at once? Until new evidence emerges, answers remain tantalizingly out of reach. What is clear is that Akapana embodies a worldview where mountains, water, and sky formed a single sacred system. By cutting terraces into the earth and guiding rain through stone, the Tiwanaku created not merely a pyramid but a cosmic model in architecture. Finished or not, it stands today as one of the great megalithic achievements of South America, a silent testament to a brilliant culture whose legacy survives in stone, yet remains incomplete. Was Akapana truly unfinished, or have we simply lost the knowledge of its intended form? In the highlands of southern Peru lies a monument unlike most ancient structures of the Andes. At first sight, it does not resemble a fortress or temple, nor does it rise above the land like a pyramid. Instead, it is carved directly into the reddish stone of the Hayu Marca Mountains, a remote and sparsely inhabited region close to Lake Titicaca. Standing approximately 7 meters wide and 7 meters tall, its form is unmistakably that of a doorway. A broad rectangular recess is cut into the mountainside itself, and at its base sits a smaller, perfectly centered niche shaped somewhat like a keyhole. Yet there is no room beyond it, no tunnel, no attached architecture, only solid rock. This is Aramu Muru, also known as the Gate of the Gods, and it remains among the most unusual and debated rock carvings in South America. Although the outside world paid little attention to the site until the early 1990s, when travel writers and tour guides began highlighting it as a place of mystery, local communities were already well aware of it. The Aymara people have long passed down stories describing the carved stone as a portal. Within their traditions, caves, springs, and carved features on the land are not merely physical forms but thresholds to the spiritual world. Aramu Muru fits naturally into this worldview. It is said that shamans once came here to perform rituals, pressing their foreheads to the central niche as part of trance ceremonies that allowed the spirit to travel beyond ordinary perception. Other tales speak more dramatically, claiming that the doorway could be crossed literally, that those who entered might never return. One legend, said to survive from the era of the Spanish conquest, tells of an Inca priest fleeing with a sacred golden disc. According to the tale, he placed the disc into the niche, whereupon the stone shimmered and opened. He stepped through the portal and vanished forever. Whether such a story has ancient roots or was shaped through later retellings is impossible to confirm, yet its endurance reflects how powerfully the monument has been associated with transition between worlds. Archaeologically, Aramu Muru presents a puzzle. Unlike other massive works in the Andes, it is not part of a wider ceremonial complex. No scattered ruins surround it, No steps lead to it, no foundations indicate a building to which it once belonged. Instead, it is a single deliberate carving on an otherwise natural rock face. Many scholars suggest that it may have been an abandoned construction project, perhaps a quarry face where stone blocks were being cut, or the first stage of a temple facade that was never completed. Another possibility is that it was always symbolic rather than functional. In Andean cosmology, a doorway did not need to lead anywhere physically in order to represent passage into another realm, the realm of ancestors, gods, or the dead. Complicating interpretation is the care taken in shaping it. The symmetry of the recess, the precision of the smaller inner niche, and the smoothness of the worked surface seem intentional rather than accidental. If it were merely abandoned quarry work, why create such balanced proportions? Why smooth the surface instead of leaving rough tool marks? This has fueled alternative proposals that it was meant from the beginning as a ceremonial portal used for rites or vision quests. In the late 20th century, with global fascination in ancient mysteries on the rise, Aramu Muru drew attention far beyond Peru. Fringe theorists called it a stargate, a literal entrance to other worlds. Others linked it to myths surrounding Lake Titicaca, the sacred lake where Inca tradition says the first ancestors emerged to begin civilization. In this context, the carved stone could represent a symbolic link between mountain, water, and sky, three powerful elements in Andean religion. Those who visit today must travel deep into the Hayu Marca region, a highland landscape of wind-polished rocks and sweeping views toward the lake. Standing before the monument, travelers often remark on its imposing scale, towering far above a human figure. The smaller niche sits at exactly the height where a person might place an object or rest their forehead, reinforcing the impression of purposeful design. Some modern visitors describe strange sensations while there, tingling, dizziness, vivid dreams afterward, though such accounts blur easily with expectation and suggestion. Despite growing fame, Aramu Muru remains largely outside mainstream archaeological discourse. The reason is simple: there is no datable context. Unlike Tiwanaku or Silistani, no tools, artifacts, or layers of occupation surround it. There are no inscriptions, no pottery fragments, no architecture beyond the carved surface itself. It stands alone, finished yet unfinished, monumental yet mute. This absence of evidence has left interpretation wide open, inviting cautious academic theories and bold speculative ones alike. What is certain, however, is that the monument reflects key themes in Andean thought: thresholds, transformation, connection between the human world and the divine. Whether it was intended as part of a larger project, a sacred ritual site, or a symbolic portal, it expresses an understanding of stone not simply as material but as a medium for meaning. Its isolation enhances its power. Far from cities, but close to landscapes believed since ancient times to hold spiritual significance. The question remains suspended over it even today. Was this a project abandoned before completion, or a purposeful construction whose function we no longer understand? With no written record and no architectural companions, answers remain elusive. Yet its presence, 7 meters of silent stone, ensures it will not fade from memory. For those who stand there, it appears as a threshold without a door, a frame without a passage, a riddle carved into the mountain itself. As one leaves the Peruvian highlands, the image lingers, a vast stone portal that leads nowhere, or perhaps somewhere beyond what we are able to see. Whatever its true purpose, Aramu Muru reminds us that some of the world's greatest enigmas are not towering pyramids or sprawling ruins, but solitary works of stone that hold mysteries as deep as any temple or city ever built. On the islands of Malta, in the heart of the Mediterranean, stand some of the oldest surviving stone temples on Earth. Long before the pyramids rose along the Nile and many centuries before Stonehenge was set upon the Salisbury Plain, the people of Malta were already moving megaliths weighing up to 50 tons and shaping them into monumental sanctuaries. The megalithic temple complexes of Malta, which include sites such as Hagar Kim, Najdra, and Gantija, date to around 3600 BCE, making them among humanity's earliest known experiments in large-scale stone architecture. Their antiquity alone would make them extraordinary, yet their sophisticated design, architectural precision, and enduring mystery elevate them into one of prehistory's greatest enigmas. Spread across the islands of Malta and Gozo, each temple has its own distinctive layout, yet all share recognizable features. They typically consist of clusters of semicircular chambers, often compared to cloverleaf or trefoil shapes when viewed from above. At Hagar Kim, enormous upright slabs form the outer walls, stones so massive that even modern machinery would struggle to shift them. Some blocks weigh 20, 30, even 50 tons, fitted together with remarkable precision, still standing after more than 5 millennia of exposure to sea winds and salt air. Within these interiors, smaller stones create corridors, altars, and softly curved rooms that seem designed for ritual experience. Najdra, located not far from Hagar Kim on Malta's southern cliffs, reveals another dimension of this achievement. Its builders aligned the temple precisely with the movements of the sun. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, sunrise shines directly through the entrance to illuminate the innermost chamber. At the solstices, light shifts to one side of the doorway or the other. Such alignments suggest not only mastery of megalithic construction, but also careful astronomical observation, embedding cosmic cycles into sacred space. On Gozo, the Gantija temples rise even more impressively. Their name, meaning place of giants, reflects the long-held belief that only beings of great strength could have erected such stones. Here, walls soar more than 6 meters high, composed of colossal blocks forming a central passage and multiple apses, spaces likely used for processions, offerings, and communal rites. Excavations have uncovered altars, animal bones, pottery fragments, and corpulent figurines, evidence that the temples served as active centers of worship where sacrifice, feasting, and ceremonial gatherings took place. Yet no written records survive from the people who built them. By around 2500 BCE, this temple-building society appears to have vanished, leaving only stone monuments behind. Archaeologists simply call them the temple culture, a people whose engineering and artistic achievements surpassed many of their contemporaries, yet whose identity and language remain unknown. Their disappearance deepens the mystery. Did environmental change, resource depletion, disease, or social conflict cause their decline? Or were they gradually absorbed by later cultures, their traditions fading into obscurity? With no texts to guide us, only the temples remain to speak for them. How an island community with Neolithic technology moved such massive blocks is one of the enduring questions. Excavations have uncovered round stone spheres believed to function as rollers, hinting at a practical but ingenious system for transporting megaliths across the landscape. Wooden sledges, levers, and coordinated human labor could have accomplished the rest. Yet the organization required to quarry, move, and erect stones of such scale again and again across multiple sites implies a highly structured and cooperative society. The repeated use of similar architectural plans suggests that builders possessed sophisticated knowledge passed down through generations. Dating to around 3600 BCE, Malta's temples predate Stonehenge by roughly 1,000 years and the Great Pyramid of Giza by nearly as much. They are among the earliest freestanding stone structures known to humanity. Their survival is remarkable, especially given their coastal exposure. Some complexes show evidence of multiple construction phases, earlier buildings enlarged or rebuilt over centuries, indicating a long-lived religious tradition that bound successive generations to the same sacred landscape, much like other sites around the world where rebuilding held symbolic meaning. Debate continues over the temple's full purpose and meaning. Many scholars view them primarily as ritual spaces, while others emphasize their astronomical orientations, proposing that they functioned as observatories marking solstices, equinoxes, and perhaps star cycles. Some researchers interpret the rounded chambers as symbolic wombs, temples of fertility and rebirth. More speculative theories claim that the precision and complexity suggest lost knowledge or advanced stoneworking techniques. Although mainstream archaeology remains cautious of such ideas, the temple's scale and early date inevitably provoke questions about prehistoric ingenuity. Figurines found within the temples add further layers to interpretation. Many depict full-bodied female forms, commonly interpreted as fertility or mother goddess figures, hinting that life, reproduction, and renewal were central to the belief system. Altars stained with animal remains further support a ritual function, perhaps offerings to deities, ancestors, or forces of nature. Yet without written myths or records, the spiritual framework remains open to interpretation, reconstructed only through artifacts and educated inference. To stand among Malta's temples today is to feel time collapse. The stones are enormous, yet the craftsmanship is delicate. The alignments with sunrise are mathematical, yet spiritual in intent. Watching the equinox sun beam through the doorway of Najdra connects modern visitors to the same cosmic rhythm that guided its builders over 5 millennia ago. It is a reminder that long before pharaohs raised pyramids or classical civilizations built marble sanctuaries, prehistoric islanders were shaping stone into architecture that embodied both engineering brilliance and sacred meaning. The megalithic temples of Malta remain a profound and unresolved mystery. How did Neolithic builders move 50-ton stones with only simple tools? Why did their culture vanish, leaving monuments but no name? What beliefs drove them to construct such elaborate sanctuaries over centuries? The answers may remain elusive. Yet what is certain is that Malta's stone temples stand among the earliest and most ambitious architectural achievements in human history, silent, enduring, and astonishing. In the lush highlands of West Java, Indonesia, rising from a green forested ridge, stands Gunung Padang, a site long known in local tradition but recognized by archaeologists only in the past century as a major megalithic monument. At first sight, it appears as a sequence of stone terraces climbing the slope of a hill, each platform formed from neatly arranged volcanic basalt columns. Walking through them feels as though the hill itself has been turned into a vast staircase of stone reaching toward the sky. The scholarly story of this place begins in the early 20th century, when Dutch colonial surveyors recorded the unusual formations on the summit. Later excavations throughout the mid-1900s confirmed that this was not merely a natural outcrop but a deliberately constructed complex. The hexagonal basalt columns, naturally formed yet carefully quarried, had been arranged into walls, terraces, and ritual platforms crowning the hill. Local oral traditions had long regarded Gunung Padang as sacred, and offerings were made there long before archaeology took interest. Most researchers place the construction of the visible terraces around 500 BC, 200 AD, fitting them within Indonesia's late prehistoric period when megalithic traditions flourished across the archipelago. Dolmens, menhirs, stone enclosures, and ancestral monuments are common throughout the region, shared expressions of ritual practice and community identity. Yet Gunung Padang stands apart in scale. Covering roughly 3 hectares, with 5 main stepped terraces ascending the hill, it is considered one of the largest megalithic sites in Southeast Asia. What propelled Gunung Padang into worldwide controversy, however, is not just its size but the claims surrounding its possible deeper age. In the 2010s, an Indonesian research team led by geologist Danny Hilman Nadawajaja used ground-penetrating radar, core drilling, and geoelectric surveys beneath the terraces. Their results suggested that below the visible layers may lie older construction beneath the surface, potentially built in multiple phases, with some subsurface material tentatively dated to as early as 10,000 to 20,000 years ago. If confirmed, Gunung Padang would not only be the oldest megalithic site on Earth, but one that predates agriculture, writing, and known civilization by many millennia. Such conclusions were explosive. A 20,000-year-old monumental structure would imply that complex societies capable of large-scale construction existed during the late Pleistocene, at the end of the Ice Age. This would challenge long-standing models that portray humans of that era as mobile hunter-gatherers with limited architectural ability. The idea resonates with alternative theories about lost civilizations, yet it conflicts with mainstream archaeological consensus. Critics argue that the supposed deeper construction layers may simply be natural geological formations. Basalt columns form naturally in hexagonal shapes, and weathered arrangements can appear man-made even without human modification. Others question whether the organic samples used for dating truly represent construction phases, since charcoal found in soil does not necessarily reflect the age of the stone structures around it. The debate remains open. Indonesian authorities temporarily paused excavations amid criticism, and many international scholars advise caution before rewriting human history. Yet the findings continue to provoke curiosity. Supporters of the deep antiquity hypothesis highlight the patterns detected beneath the surface, arguing they resemble intentional building rather than random geology. To them, Gunung Padang may preserve evidence of a forgotten culture erased by climatic upheaval at the end of the Ice Age. Walking the terraces, one feels the monument's power regardless of its true age. Upright basalt pillars line each level, some set vertically as standing stones, others laid horizontally to form retaining walls. Narrow stairways rise from terrace to terrace, giving the impression of a stepped pyramid fused seamlessly with a natural hill. From the summit, mountains roll into mist, and it becomes easier to understand why people honored this place across centuries. The stone arrangement feels deliberate, too regular, too patterned to dismiss as simple geology, though the mystery of its deepest layers is far from settled. If future research confirms extreme antiquity, the implications would be staggering. A pyramid-like structure dating back 20,000 years would suggest that complex culture in Southeast Asia reached extraordinary sophistication long before Egypt or Mesopotamia. It would force us to reconsider the timeline of civilization, shining light on forgotten knowledge, ancestral memory, and resilience through glacial change and rising seas. Yet even if the terraces are only a few thousand years old, Gunung Padang remains a remarkable achievement, proof of innovative megalithic traditions beyond the better-known ancient centers of the world. Today, the site attracts archaeologists, tourists, and spiritual practitioners alike. To researchers it offers a puzzle, a laboratory for geophysical methods and the interpretation of ambiguous evidence. To visitors, it is a breathtaking landscape where natural form and human architecture blur. And to local communities, it remains a sacred hill, where offerings and ceremonies continue much as they have for generations. Whether future excavations validate bold claims of Ice Age engineering or confirm a later prehistoric shrine, Gunung Padang stands as one of Earth's most captivating archaeological mysteries. It holds both the promise of rewriting prehistory and the reminder that extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. And it leaves us wondering, if this hill truly houses a monument 20,000 years old, how much of human history lies buried beneath our feet, waiting to be rediscovered? High in the Casma Valley on the northern coast of Peru, the ruins of Second Bajo stand as one of the earliest known monumental centers in the Americas. To view it now, its low stone walls faded by centuries and plazas bleached by desert sun, is to witness only scattered traces of what was once a grand ceremonial complex that flourished thousands of years ago. Archaeological investigations have established that Second Bajo began around 3,500 BCE, making it one of the oldest monumental sites in the Western Hemisphere. Its discovery compelled scholars to rethink the origins of complex society in South America, demonstrating that the birth of civilization in the Andes reaches further into deep time than previously imagined. At its core, Second Bajo consists of ceremonial platforms, plazas, and ritual gathering spaces. The earliest phases, over 5 millennia old, were built of stone walls enclosing open plazas designed for communal rites. Over successive centuries, later communities constructed new architecture atop earlier structures, burying old phases beneath fresh layers while preserving the sacred role of the site. This continuous cycle of building, burying, and rebuilding created a stratified architectural record, like a palimpsest, capturing changing technologies, styles, and cultural traditions. Visitors today encounter these stacked layers like chapters of a long history, each marking the presence of people who returned to the same sacred ground generation after generation. Among the most important discoveries is a sunken circular plaza dated to around 3500 BCE, more than 10 meters across, the oldest known circular plaza in the Andes and one of the earliest in the Americas. Its recessed design and enclosing walls indicate a space intended for communal ritual, likely dramatic and symbolic. Above this earliest structure, later builders erected rectangular platforms, monumental staircases, and broad plazas, expanding the site while layering new constructions directly over the old. Archaeologists therefore describe Second Bajo not as a single monument, but as a sequence of civilizations, each inheriting and reimagining the sacred architecture of those before them. The significance of Second Bajo lies not only in its age, but in what it reveals about the emergence of organized society. To raise such large platforms required coordinated labor, agricultural surplus, and specialized construction knowledge, indicating social complexity long before state-level polities. Prior to its excavation, many believed monumental architecture in Peru began later, around 3000 to 2600 BCE at Caral Soup. Second Bajo pushed the timeline back even further, confirming that organized ceremonial building traditions existed centuries earlier, and that the development of Andean civilization was not confined to a single valley, but part of a broader regional evolution. As with many early sites, the identity of Second Bajo's first builders remains unknown. The Casma Valley hosted numerous cultures through time, from pre-ceramic communities to later states marked by elaborate stone art and temples. The earliest architects of Second Bajo left no writing to identify themselves. They survive only in their architecture. Yet their continuous return to the same location over millennia suggests that the place held enduring spiritual importance, transcending individual cultures. Construction techniques reveal evolution as well. Early walls were built of unshaped stone and mortar, while later phases exhibit more refined masonry, larger platforms, and complex planning. Each rebuilding involved deliberate burial of earlier structures, as if closing one ceremonial era before inaugurating the next, a practice seen at other Andean sites and interpreted as symbolic of death, renewal, and cosmic rebirth. Scholars have proposed multiple interpretations for Second Bajo's repeated reconstruction. Some believe architectural renewal tracked astronomical or calendrical cycles, marking cosmic reordering. Others view it as a political center, where elite leaders displayed power by directing massive building projects. Another theory attributes rebuilding to environmental shifts, floods, droughts, earthquakes, after which communities reconstructed and re-sanctified their sacred place. The exceptional age of the earliest plaza raises fundamental questions. If ritual gatherings occurred here as early as 3500 BCE, then the roots of Andean civilization precede not only the Inca by millennia, but even the Old Kingdom pyramids of Egypt. South America thus followed its own independent path toward complexity, proving that civilization was not a single invention but a recurring human pattern shaped by landscape and tradition. Visitors to Second Bajo today encounter a site weathered but imposing. Wide platforms emerge from desert sand, stairways lead to eroded summits, and sunken plazas remain visible despite time's erosion. The fertile valley and nearby rivers reveal why early people settled, worshipped, and built here. One can imagine processions descending into circular plazas, ceremonies performed under burning sun, and generations returning to rebuild the center of their world. Perhaps the greatest mystery is why Second Baho was not simply abandoned but intentionally entombed and renewed again and again. Unlike sites left to decay, this place was ritually buried as though each cycle required rebirth in stone. Did later communities fully understand the monuments they covered? Or did they preserve a tradition whose meaning had dimmed with time? For archaeology, Second Baho is a keystone in understanding the deep origins of Andean civilization. For travelers, it is a place of awe, less famous than Machu Picchu, yet far older and carrying the weight of millennia. Its layered architecture embodies continuity and transformation, showing how sacred landscapes can outlast the societies that shaped them. And so the question persists: why was one site built, buried, and rebuilt across thousands of years? Until the beliefs of its earliest builders are fully understood, Second Baho will remain a monument to the birth of Andean culture, and to the enduring mystery of how humans reshaped their sacred places through time. High on the Sayunik Plateau of southern Armenia stretches a windswept field scattered with hundreds of basalt monoliths, each rising like a silent sentinel against a backdrop of distant peaks. This ancient site, known as Zorit's Karar or Karahunj, has fascinated scholars and travelers for decades, earning the popular title Armenia's Stonehenge. Covering roughly 7 hectares, the complex consists of more than 200 standing stones, many weighing several tons. A number of these megaliths are pierced with circular holes drilled cleanly through the rock, an unusual feature that has inspired decades of speculation. The monoliths form loose rows and rings, giving the impression of intentional planning rather than natural scatter. Visitors wandering among the stones often notice alignments that seem to frame points on the horizon, as though the site were constructed to track the rising and setting of the sun or stars. This idea has inspired comparisons with other ancient observatories, from Stonehenge in Britain to Nabta Playa in Egypt. Excavations have also uncovered burials and tomb structures within the area, suggesting that the field may have served simultaneously as a necropolis. This dual character, astronomical and funerary, stands at the heart of debates surrounding the site's original purpose. Dating Zorit's Karar has proven difficult. Many archaeologists place its use around 2000 BCE, aligning it with the Bronze Age and regional megalithic traditions. Yet some researchers argue parts of the complex could be much older, potentially reaching back 5,500 to 7,500 years or more. If these early estimates prove correct, Karahunj could rank among the oldest monumental complexes on Earth, predating Egyptian pyramids and Mesopotamian temples. The wide range of dates reflects the complexity of the evidence. While ceramic fragments and burial material point to Bronze Age occupation, the heavy weathering on stones and mysterious apertures suggest deeper antiquity. The stone holes themselves are perhaps the site's most intriguing feature. Roughly 1/3 of the monoliths contain perfectly rounded openings bored straight through hard basalt, an impressive feat of workmanship. Some scholars believe these holes functioned as astronomical sighting devices, allowing ancient observers to track star paths, solstices, and equinoxes with precision. When aligned toward certain horizon points, the holes may have acted as viewports for key celestial events, transforming Zorit's Karar into an open-air observatory essential to agricultural life. Others, however, contest this interpretation. Skeptics propose that the holes could have served practical construction purposes, perhaps for poles, ropes, or ritual sound resonance, or that they were carved in later historical periods rather than by the site's earliest builders. With no definitive proof, the debate remains unresolved. As for who built Zorit's Karar, most researchers attribute its earliest structures to ancient cultures of the Armenian highlands during the Bronze Age, known for their stone tombs, cromlechs, and fortifications. Should the older dating theories hold true, however, the original builders may predate known societies, belonging to an unidentified culture whose legacy survives only in stone. This possibility fuels more speculative theories, including claims that Karahunj is evidence of a lost civilization with advanced astronomical knowledge. Excavations have uncovered kurgans, stone-lined tombs, and artifacts associated with ritual practice, strengthening the necropolis interpretation. Several monoliths appear to mark burial chambers, implying that the site may have linked the living with their ancestors. In many ancient cultures, aligning tombs with celestial events symbolized the connection between earth and sky, mortality and the divine. This idea bridges the observatory and cemetery theories, envisioning Zoritz-Kerer as both a sacred resting ground and a cosmic instrument. Today, visitors describe a powerful atmosphere. The stones stand in weathered rows across the plateau, some straight, others leaning or toppled, yet a sense of deliberate design persists. The circular apertures draw the eye. One cannot resist looking through them toward the mountains or horizon, imagining the gaze of an ancient astronomer. The stark basalt pillars, open sky, and silent fields create a feeling of timelessness, as if the site has witnessed countless generations under the same stars. Alternative interpretations extend further. Fringe researchers argue that the precision of the drilled holes suggests advanced tools or forgotten techniques. Some maintain that the alignments correspond not only to seasonal markers but to constellations such as Orion or Sirius, echoing theories linked to other megalithic monuments. While mainstream archaeology approaches such claims with caution, they reflect the magnetic appeal of Zoritz-Kerer, a place where science, myth, and possibility converge. Armenia's broader cultural landscape deepens this intrigue. Situated between the Near East, the Caucasus, and Central Asia, the region has long served as a crossroads of civilizations. Megalithic traditions may have developed independently, influenced by neighboring cultures, or shared through ancient networks of trade and belief. Zoritz-Kerer, with its fusion of astronomy, ritual function, and monumental architecture, embodies that dynamic heritage. Whether constructed around 2000 BCE or thousands of years earlier, the site expresses humanity's enduring desire to connect sky and earth, life and death through stone. Like so many ancient mysteries, the greatest questions remain unanswered. The builders left no inscriptions, only silent monoliths that provoke wonder but clarify nothing. Were they tracking stars, honoring the dead, or both? Until further evidence emerges, Zoritz-Kerer will continue to stand as Armenia's Stonehenge, a testament to ancient ingenuity and the mysteries that time refuses to release. On the northern shore of Lake Issyk-Kul in Kyrgyzstan, beneath the snowy peaks of the Tian Shan Mountains, lies a vast open-air gallery that has intrigued and inspired generations. Known as the Cholpanata petroglyph site, it stretches across roughly 40 hectares of open terrain where more than 5,000 stones bear carvings of animals, people, symbols, and scenes spanning centuries of human expression. From hunters pursuing ibex to intricate solar motifs and chariots drawn across granite surfaces, the place forms one of the most remarkable concentrations of rock art in Central Asia. Yet an enduring question remains: were these carvings merely records of daily life and belief, or do they encode a deeper symbolic system that we can no longer decipher? The petroglyphs at Cholpanata date from the Bronze Age, around 1500 BCE, through the early Middle Ages, making the site a palimpsest of cultures, each inscribing its worldview onto the stones scattered across the landscape. The earliest images are simple yet striking. Large wild animals such as deer, ibex, and wild bulls appear often, sometimes shown in scenes of pursuit and capture. These depictions may have served a practical purpose, illustrating the creatures most important for subsistence. At the same time, they may carry symbolic weight, carved as part of hunting rituals meant to ensure success by representing the kill before it occurred. Later carvings introduced new subjects. Chariots, which appeared during the Iron Age, reflect changing technology and cultural links across the Eurasian steppe. The arrival of horse culture and wheeled transport reshaped societies throughout the region, and the stones at Cholpanata capture that transformation vividly. Other panels show human figures engaged in dances or ceremonial postures, while geometric forms and radiant sun symbols hint at cosmological concerns. The sun, often rendered as a circle with radiating lines, recurs with striking frequency, reinforcing the belief that celestial cycles held deep significance for the communities who carved here. Even the placement of the petroglyphs adds another dimension to the mystery. Though many boulders seem scattered randomly, clusters appear in patterns that some scholars believe are deliberate. Certain groups of stones align with the horizon in ways that may have marked solstices or other astronomical events. This raises the possibility that Cholpon-Ata was not simply an outdoor gallery but a ritual landscape in which earth and sky were linked through ceremony. Whether these alignments were intentional or a coincidence remains debated, yet the idea highlights the difficulty of interpreting rock art without written records. As to who carved these images, there is no single answer. Over more than 2 millennia, different peoples moved through the Issyk-Kul Basin. Bronze Age pastoralists, Scythian and Saka tribes, and later Turkic groups all left their mark, layer after layer of imagery accumulating over time. The longevity of the carving tradition suggests the act itself carried lasting meaning, even as cultural contexts changed. Techniques varied too. Early artists pecked designs using harder stones, while later workers incised finer lines with metal tools as technology advanced. How the petroglyphs functioned remains uncertain. Some researchers emphasize ritual, pointing to repeated hunting scenes as evidence of ceremonies intended to bring success or abundance. Others stress cosmological symbols, suggesting the carvings formed part of a belief system concerned with the heavens, seasons, and renewal. Still others propose territorial or clan markers, signs that turned the rocky plain into a sacred memoryscape. With few direct ethnographic parallels, these interpretations remain tentative, yet the richness and diversity of imagery make it clear that the carvings were far more than casual decoration. Alternative theories offer further possibilities. The abundance of solar motifs and the apparent alignments have led some scholars to propose that the site served as a kind of prehistoric observatory as well as a ceremonial ground. Others suggest the petroglyphs encode myths, stories of creation, conflict, and cosmic order, once shared orally but fixed in symbolic form on the stone. More speculative thinkers even propose that the sheer density of carvings on the plateau represents an early archive, a deliberate attempt to preserve knowledge long after its everyday use had passed. The chronology of Cholpon-Ata highlights its global significance. The oldest carvings, around 1500 BCE, place the site within a wider tradition of ancient rock art spanning Europe, Africa, and the Americas. Yet while elsewhere writing, monuments, and architecture became dominant expressions of belief, the people around Issyk-Kul continued to carve stone well into the medieval period, an unbroken thread of practice stretching across ages of change. In this way, the site stands not merely as a relic of one culture, but as a crossroads of many. For visitors today, Cholpon-Ata feels at once immense and intimate. The stones lie in open air, scattered as they have for millennia beneath an enormous sky. Walking among them, one encounters ibex captured mid-leap, chariots rolling across eternal landscapes, and human figures frozen in poses that still suggest movement. The sharp mountain air and silent horizons create the sense of stepping into a place where time folds, where ancient voices linger in lines pecked into granite. The great puzzle of Cholpon-Ata lies not in what is visible, but in what is hidden behind the images. Were these scenes simple documentation of life, prehistoric art for art's sake? Or fragments of a worldview long lost, symbols of creation, cosmology, and ritual meaning now beyond interpretation? The hunting tableaus, wheeled chariots, radiant suns, and animal forms may record events. Or they may be pieces of a belief system that structured life, death, and the heavens in ways we can only guess. Until new evidence emerges, Cholpon-Ata remains an open book inscribed in stone, inviting us to read, but refusing certainty. It is art and mystery, history and metaphor. Were these carvings simply images, or the encrypted memory of a vanished worldview carved upon the earth itself? Across the Horn of Africa, where the Ethiopian highlands roll into green pastures and ancient river valleys, lies one of the continent's most compelling megalithic landscapes. Near the small settlement of Tyre, a field of tall, slender stone monuments rises from the ground like silent witnesses to a civilization whose memory has nearly faded. Today, 36 stones are officially preserved within the UNESCO World Heritage Site, yet they represent only a handful of the hundreds of stelae scattered across southern Ethiopia, collectively forming evidence of a widespread and long-lived megalithic tradition, one whose meaning remains largely mysterious. The stelae of Tyre vary significantly in size, some towering nearly 5 meters high while others stand no taller than a person. All were carved from local stone, shaped into long slabs, then set upright into the earth. Their placements are irregular, some in rows, some clustered tightly, suggesting that they were erected over generations or for differing ceremonial purposes. What makes Tyre uniquely striking are the engravings etched across many of the stones. Unlike other unadorned monoliths in the region, these bear carved swords, geometric forms, and enigmatic symbols whose interpretation continues to challenge scholars. The sword imagery is especially distinctive. Finely carved blades appear upright or horizontal, complete with hilts and crossguards, as if memorializing warriors or recalling ancient martial authority. To some archaeologists, the swords indicate graves of individuals linked to warfare or prestige. Others argue that they represent protection, power, or ritual symbolism rather than literal weapons. Alongside them, circles, spirals, and intersecting lines suggest a symbolic language now forgotten. Excavations confirm that many of the stelae are directly associated with burials. Human remains found beneath and around the stones indicate their role as grave markers central to funerary ritual. Yet the presence of weapon symbols complicates interpretation. Were the monuments dedicated to specific figures, chiefs, warriors, leaders, or do they represent the collective memory of entire groups? The diversity of engraved symbols hints at layers of meaning, each linked to belief systems that vanished without written record. Dating Tyre remains a challenge. Most scholars place its carved stelae between the 12th and 14th centuries AD, but Ethiopia's broader megalithic tradition stretches much further back. Other stone sites in the region may date to the 1st millennium BC, showing that the craft of raising monuments here is both ancient and deeply rooted. It remains unclear whether Tyre continues this older heritage or represents a culturally distinct development. With no inscriptions to guide us, the identity of the builders is inferred only from style, burial goods, and regional history. Some researchers believe Cushitic-speaking groups of the medieval period were responsible. Others argue that migrations and cultural shifts make attribution uncertain. The sword motifs imply a community where military power or defense mattered, but without written accounts, this remains conjecture. Alternative interpretations push beyond funerary meaning. Some scholars suggest that the carved motifs express cosmology, clan identity, or territorial boundaries, while others propose that Tyre was part of a larger ritual landscape extending across southern Ethiopia, linked through shared beliefs. Even if speculative, these ideas reflect the tangle of questions created when monuments speak but history stays silent. Ethiopia's archaeological richness deepens the story. From unadorned standing stones spread across rural hills to the monumental stelae of Aksum in the north, the region holds a long tradition of shaping stone to express memory, faith, and authority. Tyre may represent a local manifestation of a broader impulse, to anchor identity and ancestry in enduring stone within a changing world. Walking among the stelae today, visitors sense an atmosphere of solemnity. The stones lean slightly with age, worn smooth by wind and rain, yet their carvings remain sharp enough to beckon interpretation. The swords draw the eye like warnings or honors, some upright, poised like weapons ready for battle, others horizontal, perhaps symbolizing death, rest, or ritual completion. The geometric marks repeat like coded messages, hinting at meanings that hover just beyond comprehension. It feels like a text carved in stone, written in a language no one living can read. These unresolved questions are precisely what make Taya so captivating. Why swords, and why so many? What purpose did the symbols serve? Were these monuments meant for individuals, clans, entire forgotten cultures? Above all, who were the people who carved these stones, leaving such powerful monuments yet disappearing almost completely from historical record? UNESCO protection ensures continued research, but the core mysteries persist. For now, Taya stands as a testament to the depth and complexity of Africa's megalithic heritage, often overlooked in global narratives of ancient history. Its stones speak of a civilization that valued memory, symbolism, and artistry, yet whose voice has faded into silence. The swords carved here may commemorate warriors, communities, or even beliefs we no longer understand, but they endure as reminders of a culture whose stories remain locked in stone. These monumental stone structures stand as living testaments to human ingenuity, faith, and curiosity. They awe us with their scale, intrigue us with their purpose, and leave us wondering about the secrets that still lie hidden beneath the surface. Which of these sites impressed you the most? Do you have theories about their purpose, or do you know of a lost monument we haven't featured yet? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Every idea sparks conversation, and sometimes it even inspires a new adventure. If this journey through the mysteries of our past has captivated you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. More lost cities, ancient enigmas, and breathtaking ruins await, and you won't want to miss them. Until then, keep exploring, and goodbye.